Hello, I'm Bud McCord. I'm here in Brazil, South America. It's December 28, 2021. Welcome to Food for Thought, Thinking with Jesus. We're walking through the Gospel of John, and it has been a blessing to walk and listen to Jesus, listen to John, to observe this story unfolding, this story of God's love for us, revealed in the person of Jesus Christ. I hope you're well. Hope you're already focused on Jesus. Remember that we've been talking continuously about the fact that discipleship is seeing Jesus, hearing Jesus, loving Jesus because he first loved us so that we can deliver the love of God. And I pray that each one of us as disciples would understand that without Jesus active within our lives and through our lives, we cannot be disciples. If you have any doubts about that, go back and read John 15. I think you'll hear Jesus very clearly saying that. We're in the 21st chapter of John, and yesterday we saw Jesus appear to a group of his disciples, 7 of his disciples, who decided that they want to go fishing. And I think that the going back to fishing was perhaps a little bit of a glimpse into a questioning that we were still in. They'd already seen Jesus twice after the resurrection, after he rose from the dead. But still, I wonder if they were, because they were not doing anything, they were not going out to win the world, and they were just in this period of contemplation and perhaps recovery from their heartache and heartbreak. And they just don't quite know what to do. And so maybe in their minds they thought, well, I'll go fishing because whenever I'm fishing, it takes things off my mind and I can think about other things. I'm not sure why, but I think if that was me in that particular situation, I'd like to go fishing to kind of get my mind off everything else. So Jesus calls them away from the fishing and he asked them, he said, children, have you found it? Do you have anything to eat? Do you have any food? And they said no, which meant that they had worked all night and hadn't produced anything. That kind of matches with the without me, you can do nothing. And so Jesus tells them to put the net on the other side of the boat and they would find food. And they found so much food that they couldn't even hardly get the food to the beach. We talked about that. And Jesus had prepared a meal for them. And you can see that it's the grace of God being illustrated. He's taking care of them. They're his sheep. And after they've eaten, then a conversation begins between Jesus and Peter. And I'd like to suggest to you, as you hear me read this, or as you read along as I read along, that the conversation that Jesus is going to have with Peter is a personal conversation, specifically directed at Peter. But I also think that it is an illustration, a picture of a conversation that Jesus has with every single disciple. I think you'll see what I mean as I walk through this. I've been up this morning early, just walking through this several times, and several things have come to me, and I'll point them out like I would to any friend that I love, any person I love. Have you ever thought about this? Have you thought about that? So that's how we'll read this passage. We're beginning in verse 15. He said, so when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Now, I'm not sure exactly what more than these meant in that context. Maybe he was saying, do you love me more than these other men who went fishing with you last night? But I really think it's going back to the book of Luke, where Jesus looked at his disciples and he looked at a multitude of people and he said, you cannot be my disciple if you do not love me more than you love your father, your mother, your brothers and your sisters, your family, your friends, and even your own life. You cannot be my disciple unless you begin everything about you in your relationship with me, and a relationship of love, and what I like to call a barrier-free relationship, oneness. So I think this is a conversation that he's having with Peter for sure. And it's very, for Peter to be restored to the man that he needs to become in a few days and weeks at the day of Pentecost, he has to come back to the most important relationship in his life, and that relationship has to be Jesus. And so Jesus is pastoring him. He's bringing him back. Remember that I've said over and over that discipleship is taking people to Jesus and leaving them there. Well, that's what he's doing with Peter. He's bringing him back to himself. He's not talking about the fact that he denied him and all that. He just said, come back to me. But do you love me more than all these? This is a conversation Jesus is going to have with you if he already hasn't had it. I imagine that he probably has. Maybe it's one he has to have with us on a regular basis. I'm not sure. He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. Feed my lambs. In other words, he said, look, because you love me so deeply, then there's going to be plenty left over for you to give away to those that I love. And this is how Christianity works. We love him because he first loved us. We love others because we have more than enough love coming to us through Jesus that we can therefore eat to our full in private and give the fruit away freely to others. Feed my lambs. That's the fruit of the Spirit. He said to him again a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Now he's asking it's the same question, but it's at a different depth. And you know, we can see that it's a different depth because he said to him, tend my sheep. Okay, giving food to lambs is one thing. Tending to them is another thing. It's much more commitment. You know, you feed lambs once a day. I don't know. How many times do you feed them a day? I don't have an idea, but I know you can get it done fairly quickly, I would think. But tending sheep is a 24-hour a day, 7 days a week process. Now, he's not saying that we need to become the Christian life for these people because Jesus is their life. But we are to be so in love with Jesus that we are willing to love on a deeper and deeper and deeper level those that love Jesus and those that Jesus loves. And that would include even our enemies because he died on the cross even for our enemies. So we know that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. So this is a very deep question that he's asking him. Tend my sheep, he said to him. And so he said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. So it's not really the same question. I think it's a question of intensity. The first is pretty intense. Feed my lambs. The second is intense, more intense. Tend my sheep. And he said to him a third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, he was grieved. He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Now, this is a deeper intensity. And how do we know that? Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. And we're back now to feeding, which means when you feed someone, you give something you have, something you are, to them so that they will be satisfied. Most assuredly, I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. Thus he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, follow me. Follow me. Now, when I read this, what I understand and the way this is impacting me as a disciple is that Peter is being given an opportunity to not go back to his old life, not go back to anything that's happened in the past. What happened in the past does not define him anymore. What defines him is the quality of his love that he has for Jesus and the quality of love that he would have for those that Jesus is love, and also a kind of divine ability to follow Jesus to the end or to the beginning. Maybe we could look at it both ways. Here's what I mean by that. I wrote this down this morning. Whatever I write down is certainly not inspired, but maybe it has been encouraged, let's say, by God. It's the moment Peter died, and we know from history that he was crucified, and the tradition says that he was crucified upside down, an even more brutal kind of death than Jesus went through. Certainly not the same, Jesus being sinless and Peter being like you and me. But nonetheless, he is taken away from where he wants to be to a place he doesn't want to be, and he is tortured and killed. And I think that this is what came to my heart, and I'll share it with you like this. The moment Peter died, what do you suppose was in his mind? I think that he was remembering the times that he denied Jesus. You know, there were 3 questions he asked him. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And Peter's denials were very specific and very public. And everything that Jesus is saying of his is, you are now going to live publicly for me. You're going to feed my sheep. You're going to tend my sheep. You're going to feed my sheep. And the last meal that Peter served the disciples was him on the cross. Now, his death is not for the sins of the world, but it is an offering to me and to you that says, even when we fail, and even when we do not do what we said we would do, the love of Jesus doesn't stop for us. So our love for him must also be complete and continuous. And he feeds me. So today, he is feeding me. When I hear him saying, Jesus saying to him, to Peter, follow me, then Peter does that. And I can see it. And I can feed on that. And I can think like this. If he can do it after the troubles that he had, then I can do it too. I have no desire in my heart to end up crucified upside down. But if that's what Jesus said to me, well, I've already fed from this passage, so I know that it could come to that. It's not that I wish that on anybody, and I don't think Jesus really wishes it on anybody, but it is necessary to feed the sheep in such a way that people have an unforgettable memory of what it means to follow Jesus. It could lead you to death. But again, I think Peter was, I really believe that when he was on that cross and he was being crucified, I don't think it was pride, but maybe he was thinking this time I got it right. This time, by being quiet and taken away with no sword involved, this time I got it right because I love Jesus. To me, it was very, very encouraging. I hope it will be to you. Hey, have a great day. God bless you. Stay focused on Jesus.